paradise is threatened by an unspeakable evil, and only one person has found the power to restore perfect order. In a new action-adventure game for your Super NES comes an exciting tale, The Secret of Mana, from Square, maker of the world's greatest video games.
Throughout the reign of the Super Nintendo in the early to mid-90s, role-playing games were one of the biggest genres in Japan, but in the United States, role-playing games were not as popular as they are today. That is not to say they didn't have an audience in North America at all, it just wasn't one of the biggest genres such as the fighting games or platformers. So as a kid, I ended up skipping this genre over entirely, and it wasn't until I got into emulation in the mid-2000s when I was in college that I started to give these games a fair shake. By that time, I had made my way through all the Final Fantasies on the Sony PlayStation, as well as Final Fantasy X on the PlayStation 2. But what really appealed to me when I emulated these games on a Windows XP laptop in the mid-2000s was the fact that I didn't have to have a game controller to easily control the game. As turn-based strategy RPGs would have you select commands through a menu, it was as simple as using the arrow keys and a couple of buttons mapped on my keyboard for the A and B button. Playing these games with a keyboard were not as challenging as playing something like Super Mario World. So while I don't have almost any fond childhood memories of these games, I do have a lot of fond memories of these games while I was in college. And this system does have a wide variety of role-playing games to choose from. Let's go ahead and take a look. The first role-playing game I ever played on a Super Nintendo was Final Fantasy II. My decision to start with this game was simply because of name recognition. I had played Final Fantasy on the PlayStation, and I thought this would be neat to go back and see what games are like before. However, as this was one of the earliest titles for the Super Nintendo, I believe a lot of people's first experiences with role-playing games were again with Final Fantasy II. And boy did this game set the bar high. Not only is this game leaps and bounds more advanced than the original Final Fantasy, it has a massive world to explore and a very deep story, and definitely a game I recommend for those of you that want to try RPGs on this system. As this was one of the earliest games for the Super Nintendo, I already covered it in my early games videos if you want to go back and check it out. The next game I played was Final Fantasy V, and while the story in that game left me a bit unimpressed, the gameplay is actually something that kept me coming back to it, as well as the game's awesome musical score and graphic direction. Thankfully, this game has received a proper port and translation to many consoles and platforms since, so even though it's not necessary to play it on the Super Nintendo, I definitely recommend giving this one a try as well. And after that, I worked my way through Final Fantasy III. But if you notice there was a gap in the numbers there, that's because 2 was known as 4 in Japan, and 3 is known as 6 in Japan. The renumbering was mainly due to the fact that 2 and 3 on the NES didn't get a proper port until years later, so to not confuse US audiences then, they decided to renumber the Super Nintendo Final Fantasies in North America to 2 and 3. That did kind of backfire on them nowadays, because now when you talk about Final Fantasy 2 and 3, you have to wonder which one you're actually talking about. First off, when you look at the opening scene of Final Fantasy VI, the epic music lets you know that this is going to be the biggest Final Fantasy adventure yet. And I can't say enough good things about the masterpiece of a musical score of this game. Several themes still go through my head at random times throughout the day, even though I haven't played this game in quite some time. And before I get too far into it, I do recommend looking up some of the full orchestration covers of this musical soundtrack, as well as some of the heavy metal covers of this soundtrack, including composer Nobuo Uematsu's Black Mages Band. But diving into the game, Final Fantasy III takes place in a world dominated by an oppressive empire, seeking to control magical creatures known as espers. The game features a very large ensemble cast of characters, each with their own compelling storylines and unique abilities. The game introduced the concept of limit breaks, which would transfer over to Final Fantasy VII, at least in some form, but this allows characters to unleash powerful attacks when their health is critical. The game's story this time around is a little less linear, where players can freely explore the world, complete side quests, and make meaningful choices that affect the story's outcome. Today, this game is remembered for its emotionally charged narrative and dramatic plot twists. These days, Final Fantasy III is widely regarded as one of the best entries in the Final Fantasy series and one of the greatest role-playing games of all time. This game's intricate storytelling, memorable characters, and atmospheric music create an immersive experience. The game's graphics push the Super Nintendo to its limits, showcasing impressive visuals and detailed sprite work. This game, along with Final Fantasy II, are remembered as two of the most iconic role-playing games that exemplify the strengths of this genre. Both games have left a long-lasting impact on both the Final Fantasy series and role-playing games to come out after these. And again, this is one of those titles I can go on for almost all video. But for now, I'm just going to wrap things up by saying you should definitely play these two games. The next role-playing series that I remember playing on the Super Nintendo was the Breath of Fire series. And again, it was a stellar choice, as this is a series that I fondly remember playing as well. The first Breath of Fire was developed by Capcom, but in North America it was published by Squaresoft. The first entry was released on August 10th, 1994. The first game introduces the players to the story of Ryu, a young warrior who possesses the ability to transform into a dragon. Ryu embarks on a quest to rescue his sister and uncover the truth behind his own heritage. Along the journey, he joins forces with a diverse group of characters, and together they face off against the evil forces threatening their world. Like Final Fantasy, this game features turn-based combat, exploration of towns and dungeons, and a dragon transformation system that allows Ryu to unleash devastating attacks. This game is known for its charming graphics, immersive world, and memorable soundtrack. The graphics of this game live up to the standards set by Final Fantasy on this platform, with detailed sprite work and an immersive detailed world to explore. The storyline is a bit linear and straightforward, but it's one that I didn't mind coming back to, and is one that I would definitely recommend to fans of this genre. Breath of Fire 2, however, continues the saga with a new protagonist, again named Ryu, who possesses the same dragon powers as his predecessor. However, this game takes place several hundred years after the events of the first game. In this game, the new Ryu has a quest to uncover the truth behind his abduction and save his childhood friend. Along the way, he recruits a diverse cast of characters and battles against a malevolent cult seeking to revive an ancient evil. Breath of Fire 2 expands upon the mechanics of its predecessor, introducing a more robust skill system, improved graphics, and deeper character development. And between the two of them, I think Breath of Fire 2 really knocks it out of the park, being a very worthy successor to the original, building upon its strengths of the original game and refining the gameplay experience. While both games do look primitive, I do believe that the second game has a noticeable upgrade in the graphics, and the expanded battle system allows for much more engaging gameplay. The storyline of this game delves much more into a darker and sometimes even more mature themes. offering a compelling narrative that will keep players invested throughout the entirety of the game. Again, I think the Breath of Fire series on the Super Nintendo really hold up well today, and is definitely a recommendation from me when people ask what are some good RPGs to play on this system. Chrono Trigger is a role-playing game developed by Square and published in 1995 for the Super Nintendo, but my first experience playing this game was actually on the PlayStation in the Final Fantasy collection. This game follows the story of Chrono, a young adventurer who gets caught up in a time-traveling journey to prevent the destruction of the world, along with a diverse group of companions, including the determined Princess Marle and the enigmatic robot Robo. Chrono embarks on an epic quest spanning different eras, from prehistoric times to a post-apocalyptic future. This game also has a non-linear narrative with multiple endings, memorable characters, and a unique battle system that combines turn-based combat with elements of positioning and combo attacks. Since its release, Chrono Trigger has been considered an absolute masterpiece that has captivated players all over the world. One of its standout features is its deep and intricate storyline, expertly crafted by a dream team of developers, including Hironobu Sakaguchi, the creator of the Final Fantasy series. The game's story weaves together time travel, friendship, sacrifice, and existential themes, offering a rich and emotionally engaging experience. The game's battle system is highly satisfying and one that I personally enjoy coming back to, but also being a later title on the Super Nintendo, the game's visuals are absolutely stunning, featuring a vibrant world and detailed sprite work from lush forests to futuristic cities. The game's musical score has many memorable themes and are done very well on the Super Nintendo as well, just as good or maybe even better than the Final Fantasy series. In the end, along with being considered one of the greatest role-playing games of all time, this is a game I would definitely recommend again for the Super Nintendo. EarthBound hit the Super Nintendo in 1995 in North America, and even though it is just called EarthBound here in the US, it is actually called Mother 2 in Japan, being the second entry in the Mother series. This game follows the story of a young boy named Ness who embarks on a journey to save the world from an alien invasion. Along the way, Ness is joined by a group of quirky and endearing characters, including Paula, Jeff, and I say Pooh, but it's probably Poe or something like that. The game takes place in a modern-day setting, with fantasy and humorous elements woven into its narrative. Players navigate through towns, battle bizarre enemies, and unravel a charming and often surreal storyline that tackles the themes of friendship, courage, and the power of love. EarthBound is a game that defies conventional RPG tropes, offering a unique and unforgettable experience. One of its greatest strengths is its distinct art style, which combines colorful and whimsical visuals with a touch of surrealism. As with many games of this era, I feel like the game's graphics aren't really technically advanced, but it provides an art style which holds up well today. The gameplay in EarthBound is turn-based, with a focus on strategy and timing. The storyline is a combination of heartfelt moments, quirky characters, and unexpected twists. The game will take you on a journey that is both charming and bizarre, with a dose of satire and social commentary. I could delve into it a bit more, but really don't want to ruin anything for your gameplay experience if you haven't played it yet. The game also features a stellar soundtrack, which almost seems to be a requirement of role-playing games. But something I haven't mentioned in some of the other games is that these games also have a variety of different genres of music, all combined into one experience. The game's soundtrack really seems to match the environments and the storyline throughout the game. While this game was not initially a success, it has since gained a dedicated fanbase over time. Its unconventional storytelling, enduring characters, and quirky gameplay made it kind of a cult classic that continues to be celebrated and cherished by players around the world to this day. While I will recommend this game to fans of role-playing games, I won't necessarily recommend it as a physical copy for your collection due to the immense price, and because it's now available more widely on modern platforms. The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past may be the only RPG on this list I have experience with as a child. This game was released in 1992 and was a weekend rental for me at least a couple of times back in the day. My only experience with The Legend of Zelda before this game was the NES version that I used to play at my grandma's over the holidays. The story is very similar to the first Legend of Zelda, where you play as Link, and after you're woken up in the middle of the night to cries of a voice screaming for help, you once again wind up on a quest to rescue Princess Zelda and defeat the evil wizard Ganon. Along the way, you'll collect power-ups and other items to give you different abilities to allow you to traverse across the world map and even to an alternate dimension. I'm sure I can go on for a long time, but I don't think I would be adding anything new that has been said about this game. Since its release, this game is considered a masterpiece of game design and storytelling that set the standard for action-adventure games. There has been debate on whether or not this is considered a role-playing game. However, after looking up the definition, all a role-playing game is a game where you take the role of a character and play throughout a story. The gameplay in A Link to the Past is a perfect blend of exploration, combat, and puzzle solving. The puzzles, for the most part, are well crafted and provide challenging enemies and rewarding boss battles. The game itself strikes a good balance between accessibility and depth, making it enjoyable for both newcomers and seasoned players. I feel like this is a recurring theme on RPGs, but I also think the graphical style of this game is very well done. Again, it doesn't push the system to its theoretical limit, but the art style of this game is very strong and I think holds up well today. Koji Kondo provides another remarkable score, probably one of the best in the series. The game's progression is somewhat non-linear, allowing you to tackle dungeons in any order you want. However, there pretty much is a preferred order to things I've found. But I don't think I'm breaking any new ground here, so I'm just going to wrap it up by saying if you don't have this for your Super Nintendo, regardless of if you're an RPG fan, you definitely should. Lufia and the Fortress of Doom was published by Taito for the Super Nintendo in 1993. This game introduces players to the world of Asteria, where a group of heroes known as the Sinistrals threatens the peace. The game follows the story of a young warrior named Maxim and his companions as they journey to defeat the Sinistrals and save the world. This is another turn-based RPG with puzzle-solving elements and dungeons, and a robust character customization system. Players can recruit additional characters with unique abilities, and engage in challenging battles against powerful foes. This game is known for its intricate dungeon design, memorable boss battles, and an emotional storyline that spans generations. My first time playing this game was for this review, and I have to admit I actually liked this game quite a bit in my first impression. The only thing I think could be expanded on a little bit more is the game's story, which very quickly left me wanting more, but overall I feel like it was a solid experience. However, Lufia 2 Rise of the Sinistrals, in my opinion, is definitely better than the first one. Lufia 2 is actually a prequel to the events of the first game, where you assume the role of Maxim, who is tasked with preventing the resurrection of the Sinistrals. The game features an enhanced turn-based battle system, intricate dungeon designs, again with more challenging puzzles, and a unique capsule monster system, which allows players to raise and customize monsters as allies. The storyline in Lufia 2 is much more expanded compared to the first one, introducing well-developed characters and a wide array of side quests and secrets. Out of the two of these, I would say you only have to play the second one, but if you're a real big fan of RPGs, you can't go wrong with either one, but definitely make sure you include the second one. Secret of Mana is another role-playing game published by Square on the Super Nintendo, this time in 1993, and though this is the first title in the series to appear on a home console, it is not the first title in the series, as it started out as the game Final Fantasy Adventure on the Game Boy. Secret of Mana tells the story of a young hero who embarks on a quest to save the world from an ancient evil. Along the way, he is joined by a princess and a sprite, forming a powerful trio. This game actually features real-time combat, with a robust leveling and skill system with the ability to switch characters on the fly. As expected from the publisher Square during this time, it does have a compelling storyline, beautiful visuals, and a memorable soundtrack. However, something that sets this game apart from other games on this system is that this game can be played cooperatively. This game is again considered a masterpiece and one of the greatest RPGs of all time, and definitely one that I would recommend for you to get on the Super Nintendo. Now here's a game I don't think anyone can argue is meant to be an RPG because it's in the name. Super Mario RPG: The Legend of the Seven Stars was released for the Super Nintendo as one of the latest games ever released on the platform. This game is the result of a partnership between Nintendo and one of its longtime third-party developers, Squaresoft. By the time this game had released though, the ties between Squaresoft and Nintendo were already broken, and it wasn't a secret that Squaresoft was moving on to PlayStation for their next big title. However, in terms of this game, I think that Super Mario RPG perfectly blends the elements of Super Mario with a role-playing game experience. But first, the story of this game has Mario on an epic quest to rescue Princess Peach from the clutches of a new enemy, the evil Smithy and his minions. This game introduces a unique blend of platforming, turn-based combat, as well as puzzle solving, as players guide Mario and his companions through the Mushroom Kingdom and beyond. Mario will join forces with classic characters like Princess Peach and Bowser, as well as new allies like Geno and Mallow. The story of this game isn't really too involved in my opinion, and is pretty standard for a Mario affair, but what I really like about the story is that it doesn't really take itself too seriously and definitely punches fun at the Mario franchise. The gameplay is a mixture of turn-based combat, which I've come to expect from Square RPGs, but also there are some new platforming elements. The platforming parts of the game retain the classic Mario signature mechanics, allowing you to explore the vibrant environments, interact with NPCs, and uncover secrets. Even the turn-based battles are made a little bit more engaging by giving each character an ability you have to time out in order to pull off correctly as you're attacking. The game's visuals have been criticized in more recent years as being too, like, 90s early CG plasticky kind of graphics. But in all honesty, I thought these graphics looked great back in the day, and I still think they look great today, and kind of hold up in terms of the style they were going for. But I do get that this is also early 3D models of what the Mario universe would be, and they would definitely evolve these character models when they moved on to the third dimension. Usually I'm not a fan of isometric perspectives in games, but in here I didn't really mind it. It really helps to give you a perception of an open world environment even though you're mostly limited to linear paths. And again, continuing with the common themes of great soundtracks in RPG games, this game also does not disappoint, offering updated remixes of classic themes as well as brand new tracks exclusive to the game. In all honesty, this is again one of my favorite RPGs on the system, and one I spent a lot of time in when I first started playing them in college. And because of the platforming elements and simple RPG elements, I think this is accessible to most players, and would definitely recommend it as an essential title for your Super Nintendo. Alright, so by now you've seen a variety of RPGs available on the Super Nintendo. And again, I was surprised at how many titles made it over that were of good quality, as again, the RPG genre was not as popular in the early to mid-90s as it is today. So as I show you a few of the games that didn't quite make the cut for a full review in this video, I do want to ask if I covered any of your favorite RPGs on the system, or if there are any more that you would recommend that people check out. Please leave those suggestions down in the comments below. That said, that is going to wrap things up for this video. In the next part, we're going to start taking a look at some of the shooting games on the Super Nintendo. So stay tuned for that video coming out to you real soon. If you like this video and you'd like to help out with future projects on this channel, please consider supporting me on Patreon. A special thanks to those Patreons you see on screen. Also, if you like what you see, please remember to leave a like and click that subscribe button on your way out. As always, I want to thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.